Welcome, everybody, to the High Return Real Estate Show. This is Shecky, and I'm here with my amazing friend and business partner, Mr. Jack Gibson. Good day to you, sir.
Hey, Shecky, what's going on, man?
I'm doing well. It's nice to hear your voice. Nice to see your shining face. I'm excited, man, because
Should I have done my makeup first before I came on the show?
yeah, well, we gotta, yeah, you did great. We have got an amazing show today. It's one that we've been talking about doing for a very, very long time. And ultimately it's a very, very big reveal of some amazing processes that have been developed over time. And we felt obligated to bring the expert on in this arena. So in just a moment, I'm going to introduce you to a man that, is a very, very key piece of our success, and you'll soon understand why.
Welcome to the High Return Real Estate Show, the podcast for heavy hitters. 2 men, 1 mission. It's time to build your empire.
Welcome back, everybody, to the High Return Real Estate Show. This is Shecky, and I'm here with my business partner, Mr. Jack Gibson. And today I have the pleasure of introducing a man named Mr. Kevin Eckert. And Kevin is a man who has been in the mortgage business long ago, has been in the investor side of things long ago. And over time, he has evolved into obviously owning his own very successful portfolio. And Jack and I were lucky enough to partner up with him and his business partner in developing this amazing turnkey solution. And now Kevin is responsible for all of our acquisitions, but more importantly, is responsible for our entire rehab process of every single property. So Kevin, a pleasure to have you here. Even though I get to see you just about every day, it's nice to see you on my screen.
Good day, gentlemen. How are you?
Excellent. Excellent. So will you spend a little time just talking about a little bit about your background and how you kind of evolved into the spot that you're in right now?
I'll keep it fairly brief, but I started out, as you said, in the mortgage business. We had our own mortgage brokerage in the Indianapolis area for approximately 8 years, which, as we all know, around 2008, 2009, with the financial meltdown in the country, we were not in a position where we had full legal FHA status, so we had to make an adjustment from there. So we actually ended up closing our brokerage at that point in time. But luckily, we've been in a position where we had done a primary focus on investor product, and the mortgage product that we were putting together was primarily for second homes and investment properties. So with our own portfolio in place, we had experience with that, and we transferred and morphed into this other side of things, which is the product side and the acquisition of products. And we luckily were able to make a pretty seamless transition and move forward to doing what we do today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So from a standpoint of the rehabs themselves, I mean, acquisition could be a whole nother podcast, and we can talk about that later. But, from a standpoint of the kinds of rehabs that you want to do, even at the acquisition phase, what I'm asking is, what is it that you look for? Like, what kind of property are you looking for, both in terms of maybe property class and its current condition?
There's a lot of ways to answer that question. We look for quite a variety of products. There's a lot of different levels that you can come at this from, as far as what you're willing to or looking to do. Luckily, right now, the market in Indianapolis, we're a fairly heavy buyer in this area. So we're getting a lot of first look options. So it really makes it a lot easier on us on what we're looking to acquire. We obviously want our process to be streamlined. We want it to be efficient. We want it to be fast. So getting into product such as a tax sale property or a completely dilapidated property with extensive rehab. And when I talk extensive, I'm talking in dollar amounts primarily for my mindset, but you're almost talking a complete redo, which is a $20,000 plus renovation, could be upwards of $40,000. It just depends. But so primarily we look for that smaller renovation amount. I would say, a $10,000 or less is how I quantify it as far as a standpoint of what it needs to be done. It's cosmetics, making sure that there's a complete redo on mechanicals. We always want to make sure the property is completely sound and functioning in a good way. We don't want to spend too much time having to do complete redos. It slows the process. There's too many opportunities for expenses to get too high, timeframes to get extended too long. You're also exposing yourself to potential city intervention anytime you get into those situations.
Okay, such as?
You have code enforcement, you have health department. They've made a business out of monitoring the city, and there's a purpose for it, and that purpose is to make sure that the values hold true and that the neighborhoods are safe and consistent as far as the quality of properties. But along with that value comes an opportunity for the city to make some money, and not to complain too much, but it does become a bit of a burden. But code enforcement is generally in place for the complete exterior appearance of the house. So gutters, sidewalks, siding condition, broken windows, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have health department, which generally concentrates on the interior of the home, which could be air quality, which has to do with mold or that type of thing. And then you also have anything else related to the interior of the home, safety issues primarily. But the longer you're working on a project, the more exposure you have to them dropping by and making a visit, which really creates a problem, not from the standpoint of we don't do it the right way. So we want to make sure all those things are taken care of. We have systems in place to make sure that we do those things properly. But when the city gets involved, you now have a time frame issue. You also have opportunity for penalties and things like that. Even if you're doing it the right way, they're going to find a way to realize some sort of money out of the system.
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty clear that is a pretty good source of revenue for city and county government.
When we bought our tax sale properties, and Kevin, you were there, so you probably were like, oh man, this guy really doesn't know what he's getting into. And this was before Kevin and I and Chuck, you were all kind of, merged into business.
Just so you're aware, Jack did outbid me on those properties. I had my cap on those was a little bit low.
Maybe like there was one or two that we were both going after. It wasn't the entire, tax. You just don't exaggerate. But yeah, when, we didn't even have deed to those properties. And I was already accruing fines from the city. Like, I don't even understand how that's legal. And I actually talked to my lawyer. She said, no, it's actually not legal, but they do it. And then they get away with it. So, wow. Yeah.
They make a claim when you're actually at the sale that if there's already fines in place, that they're going to try to make the process easier on you. But you're still going to accrue that 10%. Even so, if you go and rectify everything, you're still going to get that 10% fine and other things that can take place. And so I think they do their best to make it easier for people that are actually going to gentrify an area and take care of the property and help with the renovations and improving the neighborhoods. But you're still exposing yourself to a lot when you buy it with those in place.
Yeah,
it's risky. It's very risky.
And obviously, we experienced some pretty incredible surprises during the rehabs of those properties too. It wasn't just, a government intervention kind of surprise, but just surprises in terms of property condition and things that needed to be redone. I mean, we even had some ones that the sewer line to the curb was not in shape or not working, and then a whole new line had to be dug to the curb. That was, I think approximately $6,000 or $7,000 to have that done. It was just one thing after the other. So,
plus a $5,000 water bill too on top.
Yeah.
We've seen some ungodly water bills, ungodly high. And it's like when you're looking out at the ocean, you can't see anything underneath the water. It's the same thing with these properties. You have no opportunity to make sure that the sewage lines and the water access is there. I mean, we've literally ran into situations where we've acquired properties, and you're acquiring properties in this world as is primarily. Well, as is sometimes means you don't even have water access to the home. And again, you can't see that. They don't allow you. You can't go out and test it when you buy a property at the tax sale. You can't run the snake to make sure that the water lines are clear and not collapsed, and or the sewage lines, excuse me. So, I mean, it really is truly, that's one of the largest expenses. That, and then obviously wood destroying insects and things like that. I mean, structural integrity on foundations and floor joists is a huge risk as well. There's a lot of water penetration on older homes when it comes to basements. It's just a part of what we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Is taking care of that situation, and that has a profound effect on the foundation itself. Even if it appears okay, you go out and look at a home on a dry day, it seems wonderful, and you go back when it rains 3 days later, and you have a major situation. So it's something that has to be dealt with, and it's definitely more evident when you're jumping into a property that you don't have the access to do any proper vetting. Luckily, we've got systems in place and people in place that we handle those problems pretty easily.
So it's interesting to me that obviously you get online and there's a million gurus pushing, buy your stuff at your tax sale, and you're going to save so much money, and you're going to be buying for pennies on the dollar, and we've just learned the hard way that that's just not really a great road for us to go down. And Kevin, you speak to systems, and our company and is really starting to become having much better growth and much better profitability, really as a result of the systems that you've put in place. So I want to speak to that, because anybody listening to this episode is obviously curious about how to do a rehab correctly. And because there's let's face it, there's lots of ways to do it wrong, and we know we've proven that, and I'm sure you've done your share of ones incorrectly too. But the systems are really what make things go. And if you could just spend a few minutes and walk us through the whole process of how things happen, including tablets and things out in the field, all that stuff that you've put in place, I think it'd be very valuable for the listeners.
Sure. And just to speak to that, first of all, you were mentioning having systems. The only way you could truly have systems in place is with consistency. And your rehab teams have to be consistent. It's easy to chase the best deal, the person that promises you the most value. And the problem is, every time you do that, at least in my experience, we've gone through hundreds of subcontractors in our day. And 99 times out of 100, you end up with issues. I mean, billing isn't correct. The quality of the product isn't there. So consistency is important. And so one way we're able to have these systems in place is by, we have a maximum of 2 subcontractors that we use. And when I mention subcontractor, it's not somebody I jumped out and found at Menards or on the Yellow Pages. It is someone that we have a valued long-term relationship with. So we can require that they follow our systems. And we'll get to those in just a second. But then we also have people that are actually employed by our company, where we have 100% control over what they do as far as quality of the product, making sure that they're doing our systems the way that we want them done in order to ultimately make sure that we put out a consistent product. We're not perfect. We're human beings. It's a hard business. I mean, it's taken years to get to the point where we're at today. Years of trial and error, mistakes. And again, we're not perfect to this day and age, but what we do is we try to make sure that we minimize exposure, and we do that, like you said, through systems. So, sorry, I get a little long-winded sometimes, but
Kevin, what are some of those mistakes? Like, how do you, talk to me about some of the pitfalls too that people can potentially, come up against when they're trying to rehab properties?
There's thousands of them.
What are the top 3 to 5?
Well, all right. One big one is time frame. Managing time frame with subcontractors is an absolute nightmare. And why is time frame an issue? Well, time frame is an issue because time is your money. As an investor, you're putting money out there, and whether it be money that you had in your bank account, your IRA, if it's borrowed money from a bank, you're exposing yourself to losses. That's lost rental income. That's lost return on your investment. You could be placing that money elsewhere. So time frame is an absolute nightmare, because Using subcontractors, one of the biggest things that I've found as a problem is you are setting up a draw schedule. That draw schedule is comprised of either 25% or 50% up front, and then there's obviously inspections and draws that occurs subsequently. But contractors chase checks. It's typical. So they get their first check. They put a little bit of work into the property, but they are doing that 10 times over every month. Then they are trying to figure out a way to get their guys back in stages to take care of the rehab process, and there's no good flow. And because there's no flow, it turns into a huge time mess.
So we call that holding costs, right? So that's where, your money is kind of tied up in a project and you're paying insurance on it, you're paying taxes, plus you're losing the opportunity cost of, like you said, of being able to invest that somewhere else that would actually produce a positive return on your money at that moment.
Absolutely. Overages are another big thing. I mean, every contractor, it's easy to hold their feet to the fire on cost, ask for a bid up front, but because you're dealing with product that is generally exposed to bigger problems with mechanicals and structure than a home that was built in 1990, obviously, just because of the age of the property. So now you're talking about, those costs. It's easy for me to say to the contractor, it's absolutely X is your cost, but because these contractors generally aren't looking for longevity and repetition, it's all about making the dollar now. And that's just the nature of the business where it's located. The contractors that generally tend to work in those areas. If I hold their feet to the fire on cost and overage costs, they'll just walk. And then when a contractor walks or doesn't complete a project, you're now going to, when you hire someone new, no one likes to come in and correct other people's mistakes or finish a project. So their cost now as an additional contractor to come finish a product is 50% higher than what it was going to be if you initially started them at the beginning. So that cost of bringing somebody additional in is now you're exposed to all kinds of additional costs. So overages are a huge thing. And then of course we talked about the hidden problems, the foundation issues, the water lines, all those types of things. I can assure you that one thing that I run into is when we have those problems and you're using a subcontractor, they're not including it in their original bid because they couldn't have known that it was there. But now you're at a point where you're 2/3 of the way through a project. You find out that you have a water line that needs dug. I'm not going to get the best value for my dollar from that contractor, I can assure you, when those big problems come up. Now they're looking at an opportunity to, I guess, sting you or whatever, and make some additional dollars for themselves where they're not on such a thin margin because I have no other choice. I have to fix those problems. So, I mean, those are types of things you can run into. So those overage costs, the contractor actually completing on time, I mean, it just turns into a major expense and a major headache. And that's why I won't use a subcontractor if necessary. I mean, I have my loyal few that I work with, but I won't go out and use a new subcontractor. So if we have enough volume that I have to expand to a new subcontractor, they will never get a project from me that is going to be more than what I would call maybe a heavy tenant turnover. Paint, carpet, minor fixes, loose toilets, that type of thing. And they're going to do that, be held to a certain standard, be held to a certain time frame, and once they can prove themselves over X amount of projects, then we'll give them an opportunity to do one of our standard rehabs. So, I mean, there's a period of time where they have to woo me, I guess, in a way to make sure that I can feel comfortable with them and decide to use them further.
So a big thing that we found, over the past couple of years is, quality of work, poor quality of work from contractors. I mean, remember the disaster guy, right? We won't name names, but we had an affectionate nickname for him because every rehab he did, there was some type of plumbing, leak or multiple leaks. And, once the tenant got in there, then, it's raining somewhere through their ceiling. And then, electrical outlets not working, that sort of stuff. So you can definitely have, problems where you have to pay double for the same amount of work just because you had somebody that did poor work.
And that's just it. I mean, you have them come in and everything can look great until you turn on your utilities and start try to do a function test on the house, which we'll get into on our process that we'll circle back to, Shecky. I'm sorry we got sidelined. But when they have to go in and, galvanized pipe, I'll just give you an example. It was great when they came out with it. But at this day and age, we don't even like to leave galvanized pipe in our houses at all. So it looks like it's structurally sound, but we run into more issues with leaking and structural integrity on that than if we just go through and do a complete replacement on the plumbing with PEX.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, if there's copper or something in that product, that's everybody knows that's a good product, so we'll do a functional test on that. We'll leave it and go with it there. But anything else, we're stripping out and putting in PEX in the house at this point in time.
Is the galvanized prone to in the winter, bursting?
If you're not, if the properties aren't being managed properly, making sure that they're winterized if there's no tenant in place. But then, of course, even if you have a tenant in place, the one thing you're going to realize, and you guys know this, you have investment properties and you have tenants, so you've all dealt with it. Being a real estate investor is not always rainbows and unicorns. I mean, your tenant is not looking out for your best interest in the property, so they're not making you aware of the fact that maybe there wasn't heated properly, or maybe their utilities were turned off, or whatever the reason being. They had a life-changing event and something happened. So they're not letting you know. It's hard for the property management company, if there's tenants in place, to know if things are coming up. So yeah, you are definitely going to have a cause for concern with galvanized when it comes to having a burst pipe versus PEX, which has the ability to expand. And it's obviously, it's just a much better product.
So yeah, let's get to it. I really want to, I really want to ask you specific about all the processes, because I know there's more than one inspection, and some of the things you talked about replacing PEX versus galvanized, those are all part of a process that's been developed to create a standardization so that we can win every time and we can have a good rehab every time. So please walk us through that.
Yeah. And I'll try to keep it fairly simple. Some of it's involving emails and orders and things that go out to different people. And I don't think I need to have a complete flow chart here in front of all of us, but I can.
Well, there's 41, right, on the checklist. So it's not like we want you to go through all 41 of those.
And I'm a big picture kind of guy. So all these flows and systems and stuff can be painful for me at the start. I mean, they're absolutely essential, and Shecky will speak to the value of them. So, they're in place for a reason, and they do allow us to be consistent and provide good quality products. So let's jump right in and just start out with what we have in place at this point in time. So our current subcontractors, which, as I told you, are just a few, and then our employees in the field, we do have 3 teams that are working as employees of our business. And so amongst those 5 to 6 different renovation crews that are out there, we require, as soon as I get a property or obtain a property, close on a property, the first thing that's done is it's assigned based on flow and volume and also expertise. I mean, we have different crews that are going to have a higher level expertise in one area than another. So we'll look at that and we'll assign it accordingly. But once it's assigned, that expectation is the construction manager for that particular crew, or the manager is expected to go out. We do have apps in place for them. So they're going to take that app, open it up. It's for their initial scope on the property, essentially. It's kind of morphing as we go along, because every day we learn new things that we see that are missed or just small things. So we're adding to that list continually. And Shecky and I had a discussion about it yesterday about a couple minor things that we wanted to add to this list. But essentially what happens is they go into their checklist. They are going through that process of walking the home, and we already have 35 to 40 in place. So they're going through that checklist and checking off everything that home needs at that point in time. So we expect them to do a full evaluation. If it takes them an hour or if it takes them 2, it doesn't matter. We want them to be thorough and go through every process and make sure up front and see where that's at. So as soon as they get through that checklist and submit the checklist from their app, there's a series of events that go into place. There's an initial inspection that's immediately ordered via email from that submission with the inspection company. And we always use a third-party inspection company. It's not someone affiliated with us. It's not my cousin. It is a respected third-party inspection company here in the Indianapolis area that we've partnered with. That we don't have to use them, but we do because they do a good job and they're thorough. And we expect them to hold us to a standard that is the same that they would expect doing an inspection for anybody at any point in time. So they're not there to protect us. They're there to police us, making sure that making sure that we're doing the things that we're supposed to do. So as soon as that goes, that initial order is done. That also triggers an order on utilities. So we are going to initially turn on utilities. Sometimes there are utilities that cannot be turned on between the gas, electric, water, because there are things that have to be done, but the utility company will inform us that those things have to be done, and those will be the first items that are taken care of by the construction manager and his crew. So it's triggering that event. At that point in time, we are receiving our dollar amount estimate from our contractor. So I'm not holding their feet to the fire, especially if they're employees of our company. We have to manage that process amongst material and man hours and whatever and whatnot. That's a whole nother topic on accounting, which I don't do accounting, so we'll leave it at that. As soon as that's done, we have our dollar. So all within a 24-hour period, we have a scope of work on the property. We have ordered utilities to be turned on, which, believe it or not, is something that doesn't happen often with contractors here in the city. They try to get away with doing rehabs and renovations on properties without having utilities in place, which it baffles me because it can't be done properly. So we now have a property that is able to be worked on properly by the crews that are in place because they have power, they have water.
Kevin, why do you think they're not ordering utilities to be on? Are they just trying to cut the costs of?
Absolutely. It takes more time. It takes money.
It's kind of hassle too.
The renovation is the people that are renovating it. Yeah, they don't want to go through the hassle. They would rather get in and out, throw up the product, be it PEX or whatever it is. New PEX looks great until you turn on the water and you find out that they use shark bites or whatever and whatnot, and that is now leaking, as you said earlier, leaking at all the joints and connection points because it was slapped together by somebody who is not experienced in plumbing. So their cousin taught them how to throw PEX in a house, and like I said, it looks really pretty because of the blue and red, and it's new. But unless it's installed properly and tested properly, then it just doesn't happen. So. That really quickly back to systems. I don't want to drag it out too long, but so now we have utilities in place, a proper scope of work done on the property, and we've spent a lot of time putting together that list of items that need to be done on a property. It's really easy to jump online and get a list of everything that needs to be done in order to properly renovate a property and what you can expect your contractor to do. But I can assure you it's taken years of experience and we still haven't perfected it, knowing the items that really truly need to be taken care of. And so we daily expand that list daily. Like I said, Shecky and I talked about it yesterday and added a few items because things come up.
So you just mentioned things that do need to be taken care of versus things that don't. Are you referring to like working in C-class property versus working in B and A-class property? You don't need to spend so much money. You just have to have a functional, clean, product for the tenants, that sort of thing. Because you want to, talk about that a little bit.
Functional and clean is important. Safe, obviously.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in a position where you're doing a renovation and throwing something together just for purposes of making a profit. Because at the end of the day, you'll be eaten alive as an investor. Us as personally, we own property, you own property. You'll be absolutely destroyed from an investor standpoint by maintenance if you don't do it right up front. So spending you don't want to go cheaply into it and not do it properly, but you also don't want to over improve a property based on the area that you're in. So the way I look at it is this. when you're looking at C-class property, which is my main focus, maybe even to a D, sometimes into Bs. It just depends on the area. But if you just want to, on average, a C-class property, I believe in it. Everything I own is in that area because of the return on investment. It's a harder product to manage. Management's a whole nother podcast that you'll get into, I'm sure, at some point, Shecky. So the management's more difficult, but it can be done well if you have experience in it. And if you do it well, your returns are always going to be stronger. So I'm looking at best return. But I think that you want to do the same systems, whether it's a B class or a C class or an A class, because you as an investor deserve it. The tenant deserves to have a clean, safe product. I'm always amazed when I see turnkey companies that get a product put together and say it's tenant ready, and they haven't even gone through because they don't have the power on yet, and they haven't even gone through and vacuumed the property, cleaning the debris out of the ductwork. You don't see it, nobody knows about it, but you're talking about a quality of life for a tenant. There's no reason that they deserve to have a lesser standard. I'm not saying that you have to go and put too much expense in the property, but your standards should be the same. So now you have a tenant that is, when they walk into the property, it's clean, it's presentable, it's safe. They deserve that, as anybody does, but they're also excited about it, and they can have more of a pride of ownership. Even though they're renting, there's still that feel of ownership because they now have something that they're happy with, that they can, when their friends come over or family, it's not in poor condition. So what happens then is you now have a tenant that is going to perform better. You have a tenant that's going to hopefully take a greater care of the property because it came in good condition. They want to maintain that. So those things are very important. So we want to hold that same standard. That's why we do systems, right, Shecky? We have a systems check that you could be utilized on an A-class property, that could be utilized on a C-class property. And then you just have to manage quality of product. So, I mean, you're not necessarily going to go in and put copper in every one of these homes brand new, that like you would in a newer construction or A-class property, perhaps. So we use PEX. PEX is a perfectly good product. It's used across the board in every level of construction, but it's also a much more affordable value for us to make sure that we can hold our costs to a level where for the investor themselves, that they're not, nobody wants to do this and get a 4% return. Let's be honest. I can throw myself.
Yeah, that's right.
So at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we maintain a certain cost exposure as well, which then gets passed on to our investor that's at a reasonable level so they can expect a good return. That 10 plus that we're shooting for.
Yeah, agreed. You bring up an interesting point, and I agree that a proper rehab has to be, there are certain things that are basic to a proper rehab across all property classes. And you use the word safety a lot. And I think it's important because in our processes, we've essentially developed a safety check. And this is not necessarily a rehab per se, but it's a way to, let's just say, stress test the property. Because let's face it, the tenants, when you put a tenant in, it's going to get stress tested anyway.
Sure.
So can you just speak to some of the things that are components of that to make sure that things don't blow up once a tenant gets in there?
So I will answer that question along with, let me finalize our process really quickly, and that'll lead right into that.
Okay.
So we've now have a proper scope. We also have our utilities in place, and we have a generalized cost. And I say generalized because it's not always an exact for us, but that's all right. We have an idea where it needs to be, and know that it's going to fluctuate slightly, and that's fine. So now we have construction process that goes into place, and each contractor is going to do it a little bit differently from our subs. I know that we can require specific order of things to be done with our employees, but we know the process that each one's going to take. So they're going to go through that rehab process, which on average, is for us based on what we're currently buying, which is we like single family. We really like the 2 to 4 bedroom bungalow style, single story on a slab, on a crawl, or a basement is okay. Block foundation versus the older style, 2-story, big renovation headaches that also require a lot more maintenance and so on and so forth. So we're usually in it absolutely less than 2 weeks. Sometimes as little as 3 to 5 days, but usually in that 2-week time frame, we get a renovation done. When that renovation is complete, I then expect the project manager to go back out to the property. They take that, essentially that same checklist. It's another app on their phone. It's for final walkthrough. They're taking that final walkthrough. At this point in time, I'm not looking for them to do a checklist of what's needed to be done. What I expect them to do at this point in time is they're now checking off every one of those items. So they're doing a full walkthrough, making sure that every item on that checklist is completed. So that is everything from installation of a new furnace. If the furnace is older than 15 years, we have certain standards that we always put a new furnace in if it's older than 15 years. It's just not, it's not smart for us to sell a product with a furnace that's on its last leg, because then you're running into capital expenses for the investor right away. And it'd be easy to say the furnace is functioning, it's great, but at the end of the day, we need to look out for our investors. So they're going through that that process, and they're checklisting. They're marking out everything on the checklist. If something is not complete, that's their time to do their punch list. I'm not expecting them to circle back at the end or come back and have to fix things after the fact. They are expected to take care of those issues at that point in time. If that takes them 2 hours to take care of it, or if it takes them 2 weeks, I don't care. It needs to be done prior to. As soon as that checklist is 100% complete, they're submitting that. Again, they hit their submit button. At that point in time, 2 things happen. They're then immediately, and this is going to answer your question you talked about with like a stress test. They're immediately sent out a text message or email, both, that congratulate them on finishing their product and gives them what we call our functionality test or our stress test on the property. They then have to go through that checklist, go through the property, and what they're looking for at this point in time for our functionality test or our stress test is they're checking every outlet. They're checking every switch, making sure lights come on and off properly, they don't flicker, the opening and closing of doors, functioning of door handles. They're going to turn the furnace on. I don't care if it's the middle of the summer, middle of the winter, it doesn't matter. They're going to have that furnace functionality test. They're going to make sure that there is no active leak anywhere. So they're looking under every sink, looking for anything from a small drip to obviously maybe something else was missed. I don't know. Maybe there was a faulty connection, whatever. Mm-hmm. So obviously those things are going to be caught more often up front, but we still want them to go through and make sure that everything is looked at on every functional part of the house, essentially. So those are the things that are going to cause maintenance problems more than anything. So it's really easy to move a person into show them a property, never have done a proper test, never had utilities on. They go to turn on their utilities, and a day later, we're getting a phone call from a tenant that says, I have leaks everywhere. Been there, experienced that. So we're mitigating that by doing our stress test or functionality test. So as soon as that is properly done, that's submitted, the final inspection is now being done on the property. It's automatically ordered. And the reason we do that, we already know the property's been renovated. We saw an upfront inspection. We handled any inspection items that were brought up. We handled our renovation items based on our checklist. So any person in the right mind would think that this is going to be a product that's in good position to go to an investor, be sold, or if we maintain it for ourselves. But we, again, want to make sure we're human. We're not perfect. There are inevitably going to be a few small minor items. It just happens. So we're ordering that second inspection to ensure that because of our process and the quality of the rehab and the secondary process of looking to make sure that all those items are checklisted and done and functioning properly, that we now get that second inspection and to ensure us that we have a good product. And then once that's complete, we then go back again and have our contractor go back and take care of any small item that's brought up in the inspection. They're either going to look at it to assure that it's not a position where it needs to be replaced or fixed, or just fixing the items. And then they're expected at that point to provide us with a contractor sign-off sheet that those items were then rectified, or at least looked at or inspected. The inspectors are not perfect. I mean, they don't not the be all end all of knowing everything that needs to be done on a rehab. So we expect our guys to have a certain level of expertise where they could go in, and maybe it didn't need to be changed, but we expect them to address it within their contractor completion form.
Yeah, it's awesome. Just to put an asterisk on what you said too, one of the reasons that we like it on the sales and marketing side, obviously, is when we can show an investor in particular that's, sure, we'll show them the scope of repair, but when we can show them that second inspection, it's a validation that they are getting a property that's in excellent condition, and they can rest assured that they're not going to have significant CapEx expenses moving forward. That at least that will be, obviously there's no guarantee of the future, but at least you want to start off with a rock solid property. Mm-hmm. And the other piece to that is, we're giving a full, what we call our roof to foundation warranty. So to a certain extent, we're using that second inspection to make sure that we don't have any exposure from a standpoint of, hey, something breaks during that warranty period, and we're like, oh crap, now we've got another expense after the rehab. So we're trying to protect ourselves in that regard as well, and it's been very, very effective in keeping both sides happy.
Well, a bigger thing too is, for all of us, for both urban house, property management, rehabbing, high return real estate sales and marketing side, when you place a tenant and then, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks, whatever the case, right? Potential investor comes in, they want to order their own inspection. Now that process of working around a tenant is very difficult, and it's disruptive to the tenant. They just moved in and now you're disrupting them. It's just not a good situation we found. So that's that's another thing beyond like policing and quality control is just, it smooths out the entire process for everybody, investor included, because investor could wait, they could potentially be majorly delayed just trying to get the inspector into the property to get it done, because tenants don't always answer their door.
It's quite honestly, we found this over years of experience. The less contact you have with the tenant, the better. Not to make sure, not as far as the property. We obviously want to make sure the property's in good working order, so we have people in the field all the time. Again, this is all management. It can be talked about in a different forum, but you don't want to have people popping in on their property for different items all the time to do insurance checks and do all these other things. The more that can be handled up front so that you don't have that situation come in the back end, the better it is. You don't like people knocking on your door at your house for no reason.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're a homeowner or a tenant or anything like that. It turns into a bad situation. And I think there's an innate fear. I don't know, fear may be the wrong word, but uneasiness when you move into a place and then all of a sudden you have people showing up to do different things at the property quite a bit, as opposed to you move in and it's ready and it's functional and you can just go on with your life. So from a tenant standpoint, I think it's a good thing to keep them as secluded, I guess, as possible, if that makes any sense.
Hi, this is Nicole, your Director of Investor Relations at High Return Real Estate. Did you know that we do 2 third-party inspections on every property that you buy from us? Yep, that's right. One is before the rehab to make sure our crews address all items needing repairs. And the second one is after to make sure that you get a property in excellent condition. Interestingly, these come back with an overall rating of 1 to 10. Well, today we are proud to present a perfect 10. I'm sure you're going to want to learn more about this nice little number on Tacoma Street. So just send me an email at homerun@highreturnrealestate.com. That's homerun@highreturnrealestate.com, and I'll be happy to send you all the details. Talk to you soon.
This has been very, very revealing, Kevin. I know you're not your norm to jump on a podcast, but I want to thank you for jumping on. Is there anything that maybe, and I'm asking this to you, Jack, as well, but is there anything nuance or thing that we didn't really talk about that we should have asked that we didn't?
Well, So there's a couple things really quick. I wanted to circle back if I could, and then I just had one last thing I wanted to touch on. And I think Jack, you guys are fully aware of that issue, but it's really easy with a contractor. I mean, you can throw whatever phrase you want at it, putting lipstick on a pig or putting a big Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Cosmetic only.
In our time, I've seen that more times than I can even count. There's been a lot of companies that have come in and out, and it's really easy to put a coat of paint and some new carpet on a property, and the photos look fantastic. It doesn't take much to take a picture and make it look good just based on those couple items, but to truly make sure that the property is put together properly and to avoid those capital expenses, making sure that the roof's in good condition. I mean, you can talk about a few things, and those are all covered within warranty, you guys. So it's, your roof, your gutters, which keep water away from the home, extensions, your foundation, all those functional parts of the house that are so important that as an investor, if you buy something, you have no idea. But they said it's good, it's great, they're covered under warranty. That's wonderful. But there's so many contractors out there that think that by just slapping paint and putting new cheap carpet in and those types of things that that's what they're selling. They're selling that, and those things don't keep your costs down as an investor. Those things don't keep tenants in a property. Those things sell a property. The cosmetic stuff is what makes it look pretty. But that's not the most important thing. So that's why we have those systems in place. But anyway, so you asked one last thing, and Jack, you and I have dealt with this quite a bit, but theft. I mean, it's just a reality in this day and age. And I see it from all levels, I think, because of the amount of investor activity, not just here in Indianapolis, but other areas. I don't care if it's a B-class property or a D-class property, you're going to have issues with theft. And we try to deal with it as best we can. I mean, it's just an unfortunate reality. I know, Jack, you've had personal experience with it recently. I mean, but like I said, it's not just because of the areas, and it's because it's C-class or D-class. We've done flip properties as well in what I would call a good solid B-class area that, we had our, a new $5,000 stainless steel kitchen put in, and 3 days later, without even a broken window or anything, the whole thing was stripped.
Inside job potentially then?
Potentially. And that's a risk of using outside. That another thing right there, Jack, is using an outside contractor. You don't know them personally. You're not running a background check. You don't, it's just, you never know. And there's no way without putting video cameras and all these things that aren't even realistic to monitor that property. So, we're looking at processes to try to avoid those things if we can. One thing is speed. Anytime you can take care of a renovation when you're not exposed for weeks and months at a time, then you take that opportunity away from the people that are looking to rob the property of, say, a furnace or whatever it might be. We are constantly looking at ways, and we've looked at alarm systems and other things, which it's a functional nightmare. So we're in the process of hopefully getting some, at least what we would call siren. I'm losing the words here, guys. I'm sorry, which isn't good when you're on this type of thing. But so something that's going to at least create enough noise. So you've got your door break alarms, but we need them to be wireless if possible. So we're looking into opportunities to try to put something together. So if someone does try to enter property, at least we have that deterrent because of the loud 120 decibel or whatever it is, sirens that are going to go off within the house. And I can assure you when that happens, neighbors are going to come out trying to figure out what's going on. And that's a good way to mitigate theft. So,
I think the other piece to that, Kevin, what we noticed too, when you bring up speed, is if we can get the teams to go through and renovate the property quickly, the other piece to that is getting the property rented quickly, because, obviously having live bodies at a property, whether they're living there or renovating there, is the key to keeping away the thieves.
Absolutely.
And so, for anybody listening, obviously, anytime you have a property just sitting for whatever reason, whether it's just between tenants or whatever, that's when you have your highest exposure to theft. So we work very, very hard to get those properties rented quickly as well, because we know that's also a good theft deterrent.
A lockbox on a front door is a huge indicator to everyone around that it's being worked on. So, like you said, live bodies, speed to completion, having utilities on, believe it or not, having lights on in a property. I mean, a dark property with construction material outside and a lockbox on front is a huge invitation. So all those things, keeping the job site clean. If we can, we've got some added things that we're putting on the rear doors that we've now started doing with some, I guess I would call it hotel style additional security mechanisms for the tenant. So it gives the opportunity for the tenant to have a safer home as well. But we're doing anything we can to try to keep that theft down.
Awesome.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's expense, but it's really more about inconvenience. I mean, we will eat those expenses if a furnace gets stolen, and it is what it is. But cost of doing business, however you want to label it. But it's just, it completely throws a wrench in the works on the process and slows things down, and that's what we don't want to have happen. We want to have the opportunity to put together a good quality product in a timely fashion that tenants can be proud of, that investors can feel good about owning, that they're getting a good return on, and we want to provide as many of those as we can, so we can have, give the opportunity to more people.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Here. So I'm going to call it a wrap, because I know we've all got a bunch of other stuff coming up, but Thank you, Kevin, so much for being on the show. Really,
I think there's about 5 guys in my, outside in a line waiting.
Yeah, I know we've all got stuff to do, but this has been very, very illuminating. And for the listeners, if you got a lot out of it, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star on iTunes. If you have questions at all about the process, we speak more to this on our site at highreturnrealestate.com, but you're certainly welcome to reach out to us if you have any more questions, and you can just send an email to sales@highreturnrealestate.com. We'll be happy to answer your questions. And further, you're more than welcome to speak with any of us if you want to have a consultation regarding investment. We'll be happy to cover more details with you. So again, thank you to our amazing listeners. Thank you to my fantastic business partner. And Kevin, thank you for everything that you're doing and putting together, and our eyes and ears out in the field. We know we could not be what we are and grow as we can without you. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you guys for what you do, which is giving people the opportunity to get into a safe investment and get into real estate investment, period. It's something I believe in 100% wholeheartedly. That's my main source towards my retirement. And so, thank you for bringing that opportunity to more people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you later.